Hey everybody, this is Perch. I don't know. Have you ever had this thing, by the way, where you're driving a car, and your brain, and it's been, I want to say 30 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. I learned to drive with a clutch, and a stick shift. And so it happens rarely. It happens like it's been a long time. I think at least 15 years probably. And you just get in the car and then your brain's like, time to shift. And you like pump on the brakes and just move you move the stick, which of course no longer is changing a gear up, and your car's like, what the fuck, and I don't know. I don't know why. At just at some point, my brain's like, all right, time to shift. Let's go. And it's definitely not. Anyway, sorry. As you can guess, I just had that moment. It was very exciting. All right, let's read this mail. It says, Dear Perch, I've been thinking about making comics matter, and I have pondered something that I've pondered every once in a while. Do the events of Civil War still matter in Marvel continuity? The only tangible effect is that Bill Foster is still dead, but it's not like Bill Foster was ever a major character, so who cares? Somehow I know that Common Sense Guy is going to say something about Bill Foster, how his death inspired his nephew Tom to take on his legacy. Yeah, probably. I guess. It is. How sad is it? We've resurrected every other character in the Marvel universe. I was looking at some promo for a comic, and Ares is there. It's like, oh, here, there's Ares again. Um, it's but Bill Foster, like, nope, he's dead as dead. Dead, dead is dead. P.S. The fans are all racist, and Bill Foster stays dead. We gotta draw a line somewhere. I mean, I don't know. How many versions of Gwen Stacy have we brought back to life, and how many times? Oh, well. It says, sure, I guess those kids from that school got blown up are still dead, but they're really more statistics and a plot device than actual characters, so who really cares about them? Well, I'll do you one better. Like, was it one of the Doom tie-ins? They just nuke a town, like more than just the school, like a whole town blows up. And I mean, there's been much worse. Like Marvel Casualties has been an escalating scale. So you have like the part of a town, was it like Chesterfield or Springfield or something like that? Every time I see a comic town named Springfield, I always think Cobra's in there somewhere. Definitely. Sorry, all like three of you got that. But now Marvel's like, small country was destroyed. Like they just wipe things out like crazy. Like, Namor and his Atlantean army just created a giant tidal wave, and a small fictional country off the coast of China is now gone. It's fine. Anyway, back to Mel. It says, here is the big thing about big two event comics. Most of them don't matter 5 years after they come out. Hell, even less for some of them. Hickman's Secret Wars still kind of matters with Miles and the Maker, but that's about it. House of M still gets referenced with Wanda in the books, I think. But all those mutants eventually got repowered, so who cares? But from a story standpoint, 95% of event comics don't matter. Does Dark Crisis really matter anymore? I doubt Absolute Power will matter in 2 years. I doubt Absolute Power will matter in 6 months. Why should I care about event comics when the spectacle of them wear out so quickly these days? But that's just my 2 cents. All right, good mail. Good question. Event comics need to matter. Hands down, no doubt about it. Event comics need to have some lasting impact. That's why they're event comics. And if you think about Civil War, it had a big impact at the time. You had kind of the schism of the Avengers. You had Captain America dead. You have Iron Man kind of creating his version of things. You have Avengers on the run. It led to the events of Secret Invasion, which allowed the kind of the Skrulls to finally kind of hatch a long brewing plot, but also installed the events of Dark Reign. And like you had things that matter. And if you're clever about it, you still can kind of feed and make money out of those things years later. If you go back to the original Secret Wars back in the 80s, you had Spider-Man's black costume, you had Spider-Woman, you had some new villains show up from that. You had events during Secret Wars that actually had an impact in the comics with Magneto and with a bunch of different characters. The relationship with Kitty Pryde and Colossus. And I mean, you just had things that became storylines that reverberated around the comics. But the more you convert the comics back to, back to factory settings, if you will, the more those events don't matter. And when they don't matter, then, people don't buy in. The thing that is selling the events these days is the writer and the artist team, and maybe the hook of some kind of story, but it's very tenuous and very loose now. And that is I mean, that's going to hurt sales. You have to make these events land. And I'm not talking to the shot the letter writer made to the whatever, that common sense guy. Um, I understand deep storylines, and by the way, I know you're doing it as a bit, but it pisses me off whenever you say, "Oh, I didn't think about that, did you, Perch?" I'm sorry these videos aren't 5 hours long where I go over every nuance of every character under the sun. I apologize for that lack of detail and depth. But from a broad brushstroke perspective, these things don't matter. It's largely true. I understand there are some details to the event Fear itself that went on by Matt Fraction, but the reality, and yes, I mean, some characters were introduced there, and there's definitely some storyline developments. And hell, I think in Fear itself, we learned about the clone of MVP and what they were doing with the Spider Slayer or Scarlet Spider characters that were out there, and some of that. Yes, I understand there were storylines that came out of it, but they were two bit characters. They did not translate to actual cash, and no writer really picked up the baton and ran with any of that. And the big items, the things that were advertised and hyped and promoted and came out of that event, were erased. I often go back to that Fear Itself event because that one they erased before the event was even over. They have an aftermath issue where they literally undid everything that was traumatic about that event. It's like, Bucky Barnes dead? Nope. Oh, Iron Man, in an entire city that's been turned to stone, and, all this mass death that Iron Man had to deal with? Nope, we'll fix that too. Like, there was the undo button being pressed on that one was terrible. I mean, honestly, legit terrible. That kind of stuff can't happen in event comics if you want to make them count. And event comics need to count. That's kind of the entire point. So anyway, does the events of Civil War still matter? I'm trying to think of any impact during that does. The Superhero Registration Act's been kicked around 400 or 500 times since then. Doesn't really matter how that's gone. The obviously Iron Man eventually made up with Captain America. They bro-kissed and everything's fine now. I don't know. Yeah, probably not. Probably nothing matters. And as Civil War is one of the bigger events Marvel had, and by the way, there's a little bit of a law of, I don't want to say diminishing returns, but stuff can matter for a little while, and then and then eventually you can kind of move on to new storylines. The storylines can replace storylines, and that's all entirely true for sure. But from a larger perspective, the storylines need to have some kind of impact in order to sell the audience that the next storyline impact is going to be something that you should pay attention to. And if you can't successfully nail that point, then you're selling off your artist, which means you're going to have to pay your creative team more, and or when that creative team gets less popular, or at least you have less popular artists in your stable, you're really back to having to tell people things. And we saw that with Empire. We saw that with, you see that with all kinds of things. Frankly, this One World Under Doom event, if you talk to comic shops, it is as dead on arrival as it gets. And for any kind of long-term reader, that is wild. This is Dr. Doom. This is a major, major character taking over the entire planet, being ahead of everybody. This is not one where it should be tepid sales. This should be as much of a knock it out of the park as Marvel has had for the last 10 years. But you got a movie coming up with presumably Doom in it. Like you have an Avenger, you have Robert Downey Jr. for Christ's sake coming out as Doom. I mean, like everything should indicate that this title should be Civil War level of impact. And yet, I mean, how and who do you have? You have RB Silva. Who do you have on this event? I think anyway. What do you think? Does Civil War still matter? What parts of it still matter? What parts of Civil War are still intact other than the black superhero is still dead? Thank you, Marvel. Thanks for listening.